On your Tuesday episode of Locked On Raptors, are the Detroit Pistons here to stay, or do they have setback potential, much like a pretty recent Toronto Raptors team?
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Tuesday, September the 10th or the 9th. I'm recording this before I go away. I don't know what days are. Either way, it's Tuesday, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. You can find the show on Instagram. You can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Great place to come hang out, talk ball amongst friends. And, you know, as of today's recording, talking a whole lot about Kawhi Leonard and his, desire to not ever plant trees, among other things. You can come hang out over there. It's 100% free. Please join our listener family. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Football season's closer than you think. And right now, new customers can bet $5. If your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. Download the FanDuel app. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. And we'll get started here on a continuation of our look at the middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference. We talked Pacers with Tony East on Monday. And today we are joined by Ku Khahil of Locked On Pistons. Pacers, Pistons, too many P's. Locked On Pistons to talk all about the Detroit Pistons, who last year were damn fun and damn good. Kind of surprisingly so, I would say. Maybe even to Ku himself. They were an awesome team. They gave the Knicks a lot of trouble in the first round of the playoffs. And now comes the hard part, which is sustaining. We will get into whether or not this team has setback potential. We'll talk about who we got between the Raptors and Pistons in the Eastern Conference. But first, let me welcome him in. Ku, how's it going, man? How was your off season? How are you enjoying this ramp up to a Pistons season where there's like hope and expectation and like real stakes for what seems like the first time in a long time?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on. It definitely is a different vibe and different environment around the community with now, like you mentioned, expectations is no longer like, are you getting the first round or first pick in the draft? The draft lottery isn't the best time of the year. It's no longer that. It's expectations, and a lot of people are expecting a big things for the Pistons this year. So it's definitely a different vibe for sure.
Yeah, I got to say, last year I was not among the people who expected the Pistons to make much of a leap. I thought they would be pretty comfortably in the bottom 5 of the Eastern Conference. And I'm eating a whole lot of crow today. I'll say it, I was a Cade Cunningham skeptic. I think we had a little back and forth last year on our season preview roundtable regarding Scottie Barnes and Cade Cunningham. It looks like I am trailing on that one as it stands right now. Cade had an awesome season as a lead creator. It really kind of found his feet as a number one option, and that was great for him. For you, Ku, like, what to you made last season tick for this team? Like, obviously, Cade was a big part of it. There were some other stuff obviously going on. Was it a matter of catching other teams off guard by being the biggest tryhards in the NBA? Was there something else going on there? Was Jaden Ivey's absence a blessing in disguise? Like, what to you was the secret sauce outside of Cade Cunningham, though you can talk about him too, that made the Pistons one of the stories of the league last year?
Yeah, I think obviously it starts with Cade. Cade took another step this past year. I thought Trajan Langdon, the Pistons' new president of basketball operations last summer, did a really good job of just bringing in NBA players. Last year, or 2 years ago now, during the season when the Pistons had one of the worst seasons in NBA history, arguably the worst season in NBA history, they were a lot of their minutes, majority. 2 of their top 5 minute getters were Killian Hayes and James Wiseman. And they just didn't have many NBA players on the roster. So Trajan Langdon came in. He didn't bring in superstars. He just brought in veterans that could play basketball at the NBA level. He brought in Tobias, who was a fine veteran, a fine player. He brought in Malik Beasley on a bargain contract, which turned out to be an exceptional deal. Brought him in. Brought Paul Reed in, a guy who isn't going to play 20 minutes again, but just guys who are veterans and know how to play. And that just did a world of difference for the team. The locker room was tremendous. Also, THJ had to shout him out as well. Played a lot for the Pistons this past year. Quality, fine NBA player. Like, these guys were not stars, but they simply set the tone of how you're supposed to play in the NBA, 1, and 2. They provided spacing for Cade on offense. And I think this is the first time anyone saw Cade with spacing in his entire career, and he played extremely well with it. So I thought Cade took another step in his own development. He got a lot smarter. I talked with him about this during the season. He got a lot smarter with the shot diet, turned a lot of those long twos into pull-up threes and a lot of layups at the rim, floater area. He was one of the best players in the league in the floater area on hook shots. So he started taking smarter shots. He got better. The team around him just got better. So I think that was the main thing. The other thing, you mentioned Jane Ivey going down and the Pistons kind of taking another step after January. I think there's a lot of argument in the Pistons community about whether that has anything to do with Ivey at all. I think 90% of it has to do with Ausar Thompson coming back at the exact same time and being brought into the starting lineup. After January 4th, when he was inserted into the starting lineup, the Pistons had top 7 defense the rest of the way. They had a top 8 net rating in the NBA the rest of the way after that. So I think Ausar Thompson really proved to be the Pistons' second most impactful player. His defense is otherworldly. He completely reshaped a defense that was 28th in the NBA in December, turned it into a top 7 defense the rest of the way just by himself. So I thought, obviously, Cade, the veterans came in, and I thought Ausar, coming off blood clots, not having an offseason, no training camp, no preseason, just being dropped in, really had a crazy season when you take all that into account and turning this team around on the defensive end. And I thought it was really spearheaded by those two guys. And then Jalen Duren came along, all this other stuff started happening. But I think it was really spearheaded by Trajan Langdon's offseason and then Cade Cunningham and Ausar Thompson.
Yeah, I am fascinated by this team coming into this year because I think I might get burned again by being a little skeptical. I think I kind of need to see it again for me to really believe the Pistons are here to stay as at the very least a middle of the pack, top 6 perennial team in the conference. And I think a big reason why is, you mentioned the space around Cade, and that was pretty undeniably a huge component of what happened last year. And Malik Beasley was a pretty big reason why that spacing environment was so good. I'm not sure enough is being made about Malik Beasley basically having a prime Klay Thompson season last year. It was literally one of the best three-point shooting seasons we have ever seen happen in the NBA, and he's just not on the team anymore for, various reasons. And I don't know how to square that when it comes to the impact on the Pistons. Obviously, you mentioned Ausar Thompson, he's going to be presumably better with a full off season and, health and, just more experience as, you expect from young players. And he's clearly insanely talented and one of the already most impressive defensive players in basketball. But I do worry a little about the spacing situation between Duren and Thompson. And I'm assuming Ron Holland's going to play more, and you're missing Malik Beasley and THJ. Is that spacing environment to you at risk going into this year, or have they done enough on the margins with Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert, who I'm pretty met on most of the time? Is there enough there? Jaden Ivey coming back, had some flashes from 3 last season. Do they have enough space around Cade to replicate the environment that allowed him to be so successful last year?
Yeah, you brought up Malik Beasley, how it was a historical season. Not many people are talking about it. I've talked about it a ton on the podcast. I've said to listeners multiple times early in the offseason that expecting it's a good point, and it's a good thing to be, or not a good thing to be worried about, but it's a good point to bring up is that the Pistons it wasn't just a really good season for Malik. It was truly a historic 3-point shooting season, something we haven't seen outside of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson last year. It was a crazy season. So the Pistons basically having a offseason where we're not taking another step in regards to moves. We're not going and making a big swing. We're kind of just going to run it back for the most part. It was risky because you are banking at least a little bit on that kind of season replicating. And that is a bit concerning. Now, Malik Beasley wasn't going to be able to replicate Malik Beasley's season. I've said this before as well. He was not going to be able to do that again, what he did last year. It just wasn't going to happen. Yeah. So what you really need to do, and for what it's worth, the Pistons do have the last roster spot open. There has been discussions between the team and Beasley about whether maybe he can come back still with all this investigation stuff going on. I'm not trying to get too much in it, but it is possible he still comes back. That's one. But the main thing they need to do this offseason, if they did lose Beasley, was not so much replicate his quality of shooting, even though Duncan Robinson is a good shooter, obviously a really good shooter, great shooter. It's not so much trying to get someone who can hit 400 threes or whatever again. It's more so about getting someone who can replicate the type of threes that he took and can replicate that type of gravity that Malik Beasley did. And I think Duncan Robinson is an even better movement shooter and moves without the ball better than Malik Beasley does. He keeps it moving throughout the offense. If he's top locked and he's denied, he'll backdoor cut. He'll run around the opposite end of the court, run a weak side action on that side. He keeps the ball moving, and he is a very good movement shooter. So I think they did a good job of pivoting once the whole thing with Beasley went on. to probably the next best available option to just replicate, again, that type of offense, because that was a big part of their offense and how they spaced around Cade. When it comes to the spacing around like Ausar, Duren, and Ron, I'm not concerned about it with Ausar and Duren, because for a large majority of last season, the Pistons starting lineup after January were one of the best starting lineups in the NBA.
Yeah.
In the playoffs, they were one of the top 5 starting lineups to play throughout the playoffs. Ausar Thompson and Jalen Duren on the floor together this past season, I believe, had like a plus 4.2 net rating. In the playoffs, he was even better. It jumped to like plus 9 or something. They were really good on the floor together because of their interior passing and how they're able to find each other. Obviously, you'd like to see them grow a little bit more from beyond 3 feet. But the last thing I would say is Trajan Langdon, anytime you ask these type of questions this offseason, he's responded with, well, Jay and Ivy's coming back. You ask JB, They say, well, Jay and Ivy's coming back. Seems like they're putting a lot of stock into Jay and Ivy coming back and taking another step forward. At the end of the day, I think it's fair for people outside of Detroit to have some skepticism about the team, because and I've said this before in the podcast, it's hard to predict anything with this team because all of it is banked into internal development, and no one can predict internal development. You can't, I can't come on here and guarantee you that Ivy and Ausar and Duren are going to take another step forward. But if they do, and that's what the team's planning on, they should be fine. It's hard for me to try to sway somebody that, hey, this is going to happen, because how am I going to prove that? So that's where I think they're at right now.
I do like the point about, them being able to get by without that sort of classic spacing in the front court. And I think we didn't see this with the teams that maybe went to the furthest in the playoffs last year, but I do think we've seen a trend towards teams can get by with a couple of non-shooters in the front court if they're creative with how they do things. And I think the Raptors are honestly an example of this too, right? I think they're banking a lot on Scottie Barnes and Jakob Poeltl getting by. And hey, when they were on the floor last year, they were, pretty competent and borderline effective at times. And in a season where that wasn't really a thing, the team did a whole lot. And so, I think the idea of uber spacing, this sort of 5-out utopia of basketball, it's a pretty hard thing to achieve for any team. And I think if you're creative enough, I think you can probably work around it. And hey, JB Bickerstaff has experience working around that with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen in the past as well, with his time with Cleveland. We'll come back into the side here, Ku. I want to tie this more to the Raptors as well, because I do think the Pistons kind of remind me a little bit of the last good Raptors team, which was 21-22, when they surprised. They won 48 games, and then the following season just kind of fell flat. Want to get into if you see any parallels there and kind of what the worst case outcome is for this Piston team, as well as the best. We'll get to that coming up in just one sec as we continue our whip around the Eastern Conference. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is up and running, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. That's a lot of fun. And if you're not a football fan, which, I'm maybe getting back into the waters a little bit this year, maybe I'm going to become a Bills fan because I'm tired of being a Titans fan, and it's the reason I stopped liking football. Maybe I'll be a Lions fan. Similar, geographic proximity. I like our pal Ku, and they seem like a lot of fun. I got a couple of Lions on my fantasy team. Maybe I'll go that route. I could throw some money down on them to win and have the good times roll in if the Lions can continue to do the thing and win football games. Of course, if you're not a football fan, all kinds of other sports as well. Baseball playoffs coming up, NHL futures, NBA futures. It's all there for you to go peruse. So you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Go check it out. Get that $300 in bonus bets. Back out here talking Pistons with Ku Khahil of Locked On Pistons. He does a great job over there. Please go subscribe to the show, damn it. Ku, let's get back to the Pistons and the sort of parallels that I see as a scorned person who watched a fun Raptors team in 21-22, surprised everyone, go on a crazy run, and then really let down the following season, kind of leading to the multi-year spiral they've been recovering from ever since. And look, I'm not saying it's identical, but I do think that sort of that team back in 21-22, the Raptors, they, I think, surprised a lot of teams just because they played an insane style. They ran out these weirdo shooting light 6'9" everywhere lineups where they just ran down people's throats, played extremely hard, and made life miserable. And the Pistons obviously built differently, but like their try hardness last year was palpable anytime you watch them. Like they were the team that I hated watching the Raptors play the most because they were just so damn annoying. And I wonder if that is something that you maybe can't replicate and sort of spring upon teams anymore. And also if there's an element of, hey, like now we're trying to like be serious, we maybe have to kind of tone down the aggression and the just sort of the overall sort of level of energy we're putting out into every single game in order to make sure we have a sustainable, long, healthy season where we can actually do something in the playoffs. I think that's a consideration for these teams too. Are you at all concerned about a 2022-23 like letdown for the Pistons that the Raptors experienced that season after their really fun season the year prior?
Concerned. I don't know if I would say concerned. It has been a talking point that we've brought up. I've kind of compared them to the Kings. I think it was like 3 years ago when they had that great season. Good one too. It's kind of like went down. Yeah, I think the Raptors point comparison is a good one as well. I think what the Pistons are banking on is that they believe they have a better player than either of those teams did to kind of raise their floor. I think they believe that they have Cade Cunningham, who they believe is a top 15 player in the NBA, who they think will become a top 10 player in the league this season. So they believe that as long as we have that guy and he's healthy and we have a fine team around him, he'll keep a floor to this team to where we won't fall, however far these teams fell in the past. Now, I do think it should be on the mind of, it was a civil war in the Pistons offseason amongst the community because a lot of people wanted them to go make a move. Go. Yeah. It was crazy. A lot of people wanted them to go make a trade, go get some, big star. And a lot of people were like, okay, just be patient. And
I'll say before you go on, it felt like a Brandon Ingram team to me. Like they felt like a team that might have been right in that mix. Sorry, carry on.
No, yeah, I mean Brandon Ingram was someone I had interest in during the season. I think he would have addressed some of the issues they have, especially within a half court when it comes to self-creation. I'm interested to see how he plays for the Raptors this year. I like BI, so I'm hoping he has a good year. But one of the things that the Pistons have to be, weary about is that I've said this before in the podcast multiple times, is that expecting every single young guy to take a step forward is probably unrealistic. And it happened this past year. Cade took a step, Ausar took a step, Duren took that was great. But every offseason, someone taking a step forward, it's unrealistic to assume everyone will. They have to bank on at least one of these guys taking a step forward. And as long as that happens, they should be fine. They should be all right. And again, they believe that with Cade Cunningham, they have a floor to them that they won't fall past. But the other thing is, I don't know how much and this has been a topic as well in the community, is that I don't know how much Trajan Langdon is really prioritizing taking another step this year when it comes to win-loss. Every time he's spoken, every interview he's done, he's made it very clear that he's very patient and that he is trying to get answers. We haven't seen them extend Jay and Ivy. We haven't seen them extend Jalen Duren. I don't think they're going to extend either of those guys by the time the season starts. And I think it's mostly because Trajan Langdon's in the camp of, I just want answers. If the answers result in them being a really good team because those guys took a step forward, then I'll pay next season when I know. If it results in maybe we take a step back, but at least I have an answer on, okay, this guy isn't here for the long term, or I need to move on from this guy, maybe this guy as well. Like, as long as he gets those answers, it seems like he's fine, and he's kind of setting himself up for next offseason to be when he really makes the swing on how he wants this team and roster want them to look in his vision. So I think that's where they're at. And I also compare it a lot to the stock market. Like, you're taking a chance either way. Like, you're betting, that the stock on these players will be, you're hoping that by the end of the year it will raise, and then you'll take that chance on that. But in the other end of that is you bet on that, maybe it happens, but if it doesn't, you'll get burnt. So you just have to figure out when you want to sell off the stock. So they're kind of playing a game here. They're waiting to figure out when exactly they want to make the move. It seems very clear they don't want to do it now. I mean, with that, you are hoping a lot, banking a lot on them just taking a lot of steps forward with the young guys. And if that doesn't happen, I don't know if they would take a step back to where it's like they fall into the play-in, because I just don't think the East is that strong. But could they replicate last year and be like a 6th seed, but with less wins? Yeah, if it doesn't go well, I think that could happen. Maybe 7th seed, but it definitely is on the board. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, that was the trap the Raptors of 22-23 fell into. That summer of 2022 is kind of where everything started to go wrong, where they were just like, well, of course Scottie Barnes is going to keep getting better. And of course, Precious Achiuwa spending half the season hitting threes is going to continue on, and he's going to become a guy. And it just never, kind of came through that following year. And their issues with just like a lack of, guard skill and big man play and stuff, all just kind of came home to roost. And, it ended up being the demise of that version of the team. I think, to your point, I think the Pistons are a little more safeguarded against that because Cade feels like that exact type of floor raiser you talked about, where, things could go really bad. A bunch of other guys could kind of, take big slides or stagnate or whatever. But ultimately, like, Cade's there and is probably the guy who'll just kind of continue to reshape things around going forward without it being too much of a concern. Yeah, it would suck if guys kind of crashed out this season, but it doesn't spell doom for the franchise because Cade's there and presumably is going to be there for a long time. The Pistons, we'll get into it. We'll come back to the other side here, Ku. I want to get into that middle part of the Eastern Conference because I am a little more sort of open to the idea of basically any of these teams falling into the lower reaches of the plane, because I think it's going to be pretty jammed from like 4 to 10 in the conference. We will get into who you got between the Raptors and Pistons in the Eastern Conference mess coming up in just 1 second to close things out.
Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-hour energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost whenever you need it. Honestly, I love how fast it kicks in and that it's sugar-free, so I don't have to worry about crashing later on in the day. Enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to get your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in-store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. Again, get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new. They got 17 bold different flavors over at www.5hourenergy.com or at Amazon today with 5-Hour Energy.
Wrapping it up here with Ku Khahil from Locked On Pistons as we try to take stock of the Raptors and Pistons in the Eastern Conference, which is frankly a mess. We're talking about it all week long. Pacers, Bucks, Heat, Sixers. There are other teams we could talk about, but there are only 5 days in the week, and we'll probably do it once I'm back from vacation. But it's a mess trying to sort out where all these teams are going to fit into the hierarchy. You can kind of guess as to which ones will finish a little higher up. And I think the Pistons probably fall into that bucket of, like, I don't think they're in that sort of Hawks Magic tier where I'm not even so sure the Hawks are like guaranteed to be the 4 seed, even though it seems like most people are penciling them in there. I think they're probably closer to that than they are the bottom of that group, which I'd kind of put the Pacers at and maybe the Heat. And I guess the Raptors, depending on your mileage on what their team's going to look like this year, you could probably lump them into that back part of this group as well. But for you, Ku, where do you if you were just kind of predicting a seed for each of these teams, where would you slot in Detroit and Toronto? And I guess more broadly, like, I'm curious of your own sort of impressions of the Raptors build. I know the build is weird and they've built the team in a strange roundabout way, but I'm of the mind that they just have too many good players to not be pretty good in a not very good conference. But curious what you think.
So I'm looking at the standings right now. So I think there's a clear top 3 in the East. I think it's going to be Cleveland, New York, Orlando.
Yeah.
After that, I think we've talked about a lot over on Locked On Pistons. I believe it's going to be a battle between Atlanta and Detroit for the 4th seed. I think Atlanta is really good. I love their offseason. I love their future of their offseason that they made, especially with the trade that they made with former Piston GM Troy Weaver, who just gifted them a first-round pick that could be the first overall pick next year. So that's great. I love
Derek Queen.
Yes. I love Atlanta's offseason. I think a lot of that, though, is going to be dependent on their health. They have a lot of guys that they're banking on being really good for them that have dealt with health issues throughout the career, whether it be Kristaps, whether it be Jalen Johnson, whether it be Luke Kennard. These guys are health concerns. If they're healthy, I really like their build. So I got the Pistons and the Hawks around the 4 or 5 seed in the East. That's where I expect those teams to finish out. Then you got, obviously, like you mentioned, you have the Bucks, you have the Heat, you have the Raptors. I'm kind of out on the Sixers, obviously, because Joel Embiid's going to have to show me that his career is not over until I believe it isn't. So, it's really, I look at the teams, And there's always one team I feel like that like is a sneaky team that jumps up that people don't talk about. I feel like it might be the Hornets this year, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm not buying it, man. Tony East tried to talk me into the damn Hornets yesterday. Not happening.
He did. See, you got to join. You got to join the bandwagon. But,
I promise you, I will never join the bandwagon of a team with LaMelo Ball on it until he gives me a proof that I should be doing otherwise. He's fun. He's a meme. He is, for some reason, the favorite player of all the 11-year-olds I coach basketball for, which is a bad thing because they don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Fair enough. So yeah, I got the Bucks, Heat, and Raptors kind of in the same tier after that. I feel like you have to give the Bucks the benefit of the doubt because they have Giannis, and it's like I can't imagine Giannis being in a play-in. I just like I can't see it, even though I really just don't like their team. I don't really like the offseason they had either. Like I'm not a fan of it. But
is Giannis is Giannis. Bad.
Yeah, but like I said, Giannis is Giannis, so I gotta give him that. The Raptors, though, are a team that we've had some like lives over in the Pistons community and some spaces and stuff. We've talked about other teams and stuff. The Raptors are a team I'm really like, what's the word? Intrigued by.
Sure,
because they have talent, but I don't know if any of the talent fits together, and I don't know if any of the talent is as good as maybe Raptors believe it is. Like I really like Brandon Ingram. I'm a fan of his, but does he fit with what the Raptors are doing? I don't know. Scottie Barnes, I think is fine. I like Scottie, but I don't know if he's a 1 or a 2. And I feel like for the last 2 years, it feels like the Raptors are trying to figure that out as well. So I don't know if they're still trying to, push that. I don't really like RJ Barrett anymore. He has talent, but I question how good of an NBA player he actually is at this point now. I like Quickly. I really like Podol. So like I like Grady Dick as well. Like they have talent throughout their roster. It's just a matter of, and I liked the draft that they had as well. Like there's things to like about the Raptors. It's just, I don't know if they fit together. But if Brandon Ingram can be as good as I think he is, especially when he's healthy, and Scottie can, at least, be what I don't think Scottie's bad. I don't think he's ever been bad, but I just don't know if he's as, can be asked to be as high, like the best player on a team. If Brandon Ingram can be that, and Scottie kind of moves down to that, star role player type of role, I think they could be sneaky. It's just, I'm really interested to see how it all fits together, I guess.
I mean, all totally fair. And I think like they're probably the hardest team in the league to project because we haven't seen them play together at all over really even excluding Brandon Ingram over the last couple of seasons. It's been so disjointed, so tanky, so just like disrupted by injury, false start after false start. We've barely seen them together really since Quickly and Barrett arrived in Toronto. And even when they did, a big chunk of the sample we got was with Pascal Siakam on the team, which, by the way, they were pretty awesome with Pascal. But then Jakob Poeltl got hurt, and then, we all know what happened after that. I think, like, I maybe it's just because I do a daily podcast about the team and I have to be bullish, for my own sanity. But I do think the sort of overall just like top to bottom talent of the roster is getting slept on a little bit. And I think really the fit concern comes down to, frankly, one guy. Like I'm pretty bullish on the idea of Ingram fitting in. I think everything he says, it sounds like he's just thrilled to be in a new situation away from New Orleans, playing with a new team. I think he's going to be adaptable. I think Scottie Barnes wants less of an offensive burden as well. I think like that's something he's eager to sort of change up his play style, to sort of allow for. And I think you could kind of have like a 1A, 1B type situation where Scottie is more like your anchor defensively, who's like more of a play finisher and sort of secondary creator. And Ingram is, in concert with Quickly kind of running the show a little bit on top of the system that they run, just kind of being how they run their offense anyway. It's like a very sort of egalitarian system, a lot of movement, a lot of cutting, et cetera, and dribble handoffs, things like that. I think Barrett, he's the weird sore thumb because he's not a great defender and he's not a three-point shooter that teams care about. I think we'll probably see them experiment with a whole lot of staggered lineups. I think he's not going to play with the rest of the starters, frankly, all that much. And I think it's been pretty telegraphed that he's not part of the long-term plans. I think if you took Barrett out and just like replaced him with like a couple of fine role players, or, if they were able to pull off that move for Derek White, for example, at the draft that they were rumored to be trying to pursue with RJ involved, and I think the 9th pick, like that would totally set everything into place in a way that I'm really excited about. They're not quite there yet, but just because it's incomplete and because there's one kind of weird fitting guy doesn't mean the rest of the puzzle is not pretty attractive to me. And so I think like in this league where you just got to have a lot of dudes to survive a season, I feel like that's going to be their strength, even if they're not like uber talented. Like I think they're going to finish ahead of the Bucks, frankly, because I just think the Bucks don't have enough to survive 82 games, even with Giannis being who Giannis is. I just kind of think at some point the attrition around him and the fact that Kevin Porter Jr. and Gary Trent Jr. are going to be the second and third most important players on the team is going to catch up to them at some point. But I'm open to being wrong on that one. I think there is so much room for movement between 4 and 10. And I think there's a chance that these seeds are kind of settled by, like, I don't know, 6 games top to bottom. Like, I think it could be very much like last year's Western Conference. I don't know what you think about that.
No, yeah, I think it could be very tight. I mean, the standings between 4 and like to the end of the season, the Pistons were fighting with the Pacers and Bucks for like the last like week and a half of the season. They were fighting for the 4th seed. Now Indiana ended up moving past them, but then you had Orlando and Atlanta that were kind of fighting with the Pistons for the 6th seed as well. Like, it was very close until like the last week and a half, 2 weeks of the season. I remember it being a huge deal. I wrote about it quite a bit about which, should the Pistons potentially lose some games to try to avoid going against a certain matchup. So it's like, I think it's going to be very close between after the top 3. I think it could be very close because a lot of these teams have unanswered questions about them. Atlanta's with their health, like you mentioned with Milwaukee. Detroit needs to figure out, people need to see, are these young players actually going to take another step forward? And can they replicate a season that they had previously? Is the fit with the Raptors going to be good enough? Is Miami going to be serious this year? Like, it's like there's so many. And then is Philly actually going to be healthy for once? If they are, who knows what happens? Like, there's a lot of questions in the Eastern Conference in the middle of the pack. So I agree. I do want to ask you one question though before we wrap up, if that's okay.
Yeah, fire away. Yeah.
Where are the Raptors? Because I follow quite a bit of Raptors fans and talk with them a little bit. I get mixed answers here. Where is like the Raptors community on Scottie Barnes right now as like a foundation piece moving forward? Because last year, from the outside perspective, it looked like a lot of people believed that, this is the face of the franchise. I believe you guys were rumored to be involved in it, like not involved, but there's a rumor of like, oh, if you want to trade for, I think KD or something, then you could trade Scottie like 2 years ago or something, whatever.
Right.
And everyone was like, Scottie's the face. No, don't move him. And then
that was after his rookie year, the one we talked about, where like he was awesome as a rookie, and then that was the summer where I think fairly enough, like people didn't want to trade him for KD. But yeah,
right. And then this offseason, I feel like I've seen, at least from the Raptors people I follow and happen to see, it doesn't feel like it's that. It's not that they don't like Scottie, but it doesn't seem like there's that much confidence anymore of him being like a face of the franchise. So where are you guys at with Scottie right now?
I mean, I can't speak for the whole fan base. The fan base has wild swings when it comes to being optimistic or doomer about all their guys. I'd probably come down somewhere in the middle. Like, I think Scottie Barnes is really good. I think his defense last year is one of the more slept on sort of individual skill improvements that any player made in the league. He became just like a true impact. He's on the floor. The team is good at defense type of guy. And I think, if the team were better, he would have been very comfortably in all defense conversations. And I think he's got a shot to make a push at it this year. Offensively, there's this whole sort of notion that I think still corners of the fan base hang on to, that he's a point guard. He's not a point guard. He never really has been a point guard. And, it's as much as those illusions of Magic Johnson back in the day were fun, it's just not what he is. He's more like a power wing type who is kind of an everyman on defense. And I actually think he's like a better play finisher than he's really had any opportunity to be in the NBA, like especially since Pascal Siakam got traded. He's had to be like a lead creator, and he's just not overexposed doing that. And he did it last year with like a really poor situation around him. Emmanuel quickly was hurt for half the year, only played 33 games. Like, that was the single biggest, detriment to the entire offense, was just not having his 3-point shooting and volume and ball handling. And Scottie was left having to create from the top a whole bunch. I think this year they're finally going to put Scottie into a position where he can actually like thrive and do the things that he's good at, which to me is like half the battle with whether a player is good or not, is are they being used properly? I think they're going to find that this year. And so I think he's in for like a pretty impactful season. We're doing our top 100 for Locked In NBA. And like, I had him in my like top 25 of impact for this season, because I just think the team is going to be pretty good and he's going to have a lot of say over that. And he might not be your classic like top 25 player in the league, but just pure impact wise, he's too talented and too athletic and too gifted defensively and as a playmaker and as a play finisher. He just does too much stuff well to not figure it out at some point. And he still remains 23 years old. So like, yeah, I'm by no means out on Scottie Barnes. I think his max contract is going to look just fine at the 25% max for the next 5 years as it kicks in this year. You know, a year ago, I was saying he's better than Cade Cunningham. That was probably wrong, but, you know, we all miss on things sometimes. And I think that's kind of where I'm at with Scottie. I'm very much in the middle and think he's a good basketball player who's going to give you max value, just maybe in less of the sort of on-ball creative role that the biggest Scottie heads out there wish he was going to be sort of occupying. But I think it'll be for his benefit that he's not doing that.
Yeah, I as an outside person looking in, I completely agree with that. Like, again, maybe it's an ignorant opinion because I'm not watching the Raptors every single day or anything, but like I've long believed that Scottie should not be put into this lead creator role. He is a great play finisher. He's great at like these tertiary, you know, kind of roles, these smaller things within offense. He's a great finisher around the rim, that kind of thing. He's a really good defender, obviously, like you mentioned. I feel like if you put him next to somebody who has the ball in their hands and he kind of can feast off of someone else's gravity, where instead of it's him having to create everyone's off, you know, I just don't think that's what he is. So I think the Raptors, he should look even better this year, and I think the Raptors could be sneaky this year. I'm just interested to see about the fit. And I'm hoping Brandon Ingram plays really well because I really like BI.
Yeah, me too. You and me both, man. This was great, man. Thanks so much for hopping on the show. Really appreciate it. Where can people check out all your work?
Yeah, you can find me over on Twitter at Ku Khahil. You can obviously find Locked On Pistons wherever you find this, Locked On Raptors on whatever podcast platform you listen to this on, over on YouTube as well. And also check out some of my work over on Substack. You can find it over at kukhahil.substack.com, or you can look it up by looking up the Pistons Kudos. Appreciate you having me on. Hopefully, you know, we see the Raptors and Pistons competing against each other for a potential playoff season this year.
Dude, one of my favorite things that I used to do on this show all the time was like crossovers with the Raptors contemporaries in the Eastern Conference, but they've been trash for years. And so I haven't really done that much because I'm not really interested in talking to like Nets guys about the Nets. And so, here's to hoping that the Raptors are in the middle of the pack in the East as this week-long series is kind of predicting and hoping. We'll definitely catch up throughout the season. Thanks so much. And to you, the listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow with Camille Davis from Locked On Bucks. We're going to talk about why the Bucks are trash. Giannis is great. Everyone else, stinky. We'll get into that. We got the Heat coming up later. We got Sixers on Friday as well with our pal Trill Bro Dude from Ball. You have all that to look forward to this week on the show as I am, recording to you from the past as I'm on vacation, probably surfing right now. Either way, talk to you soon. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye. Damn it.